We're going to have a lot of energetic ideas presented, and we hope that you will consider this very interactive. You all have some experience, whether it's being called yourself and being asked for a gift, or calling and asking for a gift for the university. So we hope that this will be very interactive and you take time to share your ideas and jump in with what you think works and what doesn't work. First of all, we'd like to just do a quick introduction. Maggie, why don't you start us off?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Margaret Smith. I'm a 02 graduate of college, so you all probably know a little bit more about fundraising than I do, but hopefully we'll all learn from each other this morning. I live in Chicago. I run my own alternative medicine and chiropractic practice. So that's a little bit about me. I've been the chair of the first year and fifth year reading committee, so we did a fair amount of asking during those committees, and now I'm the chair of the 2002 class council. And if you guys don't know about the class councils, they're starting for every class, and I encourage you to figure out what's going on with yours and let's get everything involved.
Thanks, Maggie. I'm Danny Kaufman. I've been volunteering for the university since about 5 years after I left campus, which was an age ago. I've done a lot of annual fund calling, phone-a-thons in my local hometown in Washington. I have worked on 2 capital campaigns for the university, and I'm currently the regional chair of the Chicago Society, which is a group of very generous and loyal alums who give at the $2,500 a year level and above. And yes, we call them and make asks on a regular basis, sometimes by phone or personal solicitations as well. I just completed a fundraising program at the University of Indiana Center on Philanthropy Fundraising School, a program there. So I've had a chance to learn some theory to connect to the practice that I've learned over the years in trainings just like this that the university is offering. So let's do a real quick survey. How many of you have never, ever made a fundraising phone call to ask someone for a gift? Raise your hand. All right. How many of you have done a little bit of fundraising, a little bit of calling to make the ask? Good. And how many of you feel that you're pretty well experienced making fundraising calls and asking? Raise your hand. All right. And how many of you have gotten calls asking you to do it? Okay, good. So you all know maybe what works or maybe what doesn't work so well. Today you're going to be learning some fundraising basics. Then we're going to talk about those 5 key steps in a fundraising call. And we're going to do 2 role plays. Maggie and I are going to be doing the role plays, and they are totally unrehearsed. We are just going to do whatever we feel the moment of the call, whatever we respond. So we don't know what we're going to do. We may be really generous today, or we may decide, no, this is not making it. So I hope that you will listen while we make those role calls, because we may actually make some mistakes. We may not do it according to all the rules that we're going to talk about, or the suggestions and guidelines. So we're going to ask you to listen for the things that we do well and the things that we can improve upon, so we can all learn. We're also going to have you work with your buddy next to you or close to you, so you can give some feedback and come up with some ideas. Okay? So let's go to the slides and real quick talk about some fundraising basics. Yeah, let's do some expectations first. What do you think your ideal would be for when you leave today? What would you like to get? Just shout out a few things.
How to approach someone, cold call. You've got a classmate on the list, you need to call them, you've never met them, never heard of them, don't have any affinity. They were sports and you were something else.
Very good. How to make a cold call to someone you really don't know.
Yeah.
That sounds good. And let's face it, a lot of the calls will be like that. Now, for some of you making reunion phone calls, you'll have the experience of, well, you were in the same class, you know some of the same professors, you are on campus about the same time. But a lot of times you'll be calling people who graduated 30 years before you or 30 years after you, and how do you establish that affinity? What else would you like to make sure we talk about?
Building a relationship over time, like with the Chicago Society, and how not to ask for too little.
Very good. And how you build that relationship over time and how you ask for the right amount. Very good. It's important.
I guess similar to the cold call, but how do you ask friends who are still in grad school, who you know don't have very much money?
How you ask a student, a current student.
Current students.
Yeah, and also how do you ask parents of current students? Because believe it or not, the parents of students are some of our most generous givers. They're very generous. So keep that in mind. Think beyond the generation that of the student. Think parents, grandparents, think children as well. Because those are very good prospects. And in Chicago, we find that our most generous givers are our friends. Our parents are also very generous. What else would you like to talk about?
What the fine line is between very patient and just going wrong, probably better to move on.
To move on.
Yeah.
Very good question. When to keep pushing and keep going back, and when to say, I don't think this is going to work.
Has everyone signed in?
Yeah, we'd love to have you sign in and leave your email address if you have provided it. That way we can create a community if you're interested, and we can share some fundraising tips or articles or ideas. If that works for you, leave your email address as well. And if you want that to circulate back to put down your email address, just keep on sending it around.
While you're listening really carefully what we say, though, right?
That's right. Okay, anything else? Expectations? Good, let's get started. First of all, some fundraising basics.
We'll switch back.
All right, good. Just think we're on the evening news. Fundraising basics. First, volunteers are, statistics consistently show that volunteers become excellent donors. There is a path, and that path starts as being a volunteer. So keep in mind that if you can get someone to volunteer, you have started them on the path to becoming a donor. So volunteers are excellent prospects to become donors, and volunteers and donors need and want to be asked. The first time that I volunteered at a phone-a-thon, I volunteered because somebody called out of the blue and asked me to come to a phone-a-thon. I didn't know them. I saw them at one phone-a-thon. I never saw them again, but I've been volunteering for the university for 30 years because one volunteer called out of the blue and asked me to volunteer. Okay? So keep that in mind, that don't worry about approaching people. People like to be asked to volunteer and to donate. And then also a personal ask is most important. Whether it's a personal call, whether it's a personal letter on your own stationery with your own stamp on it, or whether it's a get-together. Let's get together for coffee. Hi, Dan. Or let's have dinner together or a lunch together. A personal ask is very important. Thank you. Now, the fundraising process is really important for you to get a good handle on. It starts with awareness. And the neat thing about volunteering for the University of Chicago is that people are really aware of the university. You don't need to explain who you are. But generally speaking, if you're calling, you do need to make sure that whoever you're calling is aware of the University of Chicago. You need to generate interest. And again, when you're calling another alum, they may most likely be interested in this cause. You aren't calling them out of the blue, asking for them to contribute to something they don't know about. So you've already got 2 legs up when you're volunteering for the University of Chicago, because they're aware of you, and most likely they're very interested and passionate, or at least you can help make them passionate about this cause. Most important thing is getting that first-time gift. And they say that it's so important to get someone to give within 5 years of leaving school. That's why, for those of you who are still students and are asking other students to contribute, it's so important. How many of you are students here who are asking other students? Great. Good job. You are the future of the university. Because getting people to make that first gift is what's so important. The next thing is getting them to make a repeat gift. Whether you go back to them in 6 months, a year, maybe they don't make that repeat gift for 2 years. Don't lose heart. The most important thing is getting that repeat gift. And then once you've gotten that repeat gift, the next thing is to upgrade the gift. So maybe if you're fundraising to other students, maybe the first year you get $5. And maybe when you go back, you get another $5. But your goal is to get them maybe to double it to $10. And that's a huge increase for a student who has a lot of expenses. But, you know, 100% increase, that's great. Whether you're at the Chicago Society asking for $2,500 or whether you're soliciting a student, getting them to make an upgraded gift is important. Then you move along that ladder of fundraising to special gifts. Maybe someone approaches you, we're opening Alumni House and we'd like very much for you to sponsor the reception area. Or we'd like you to sponsor a window in the Alumni House. Or maybe if you are soliciting to students, we'd like very much for you to contribute to X, Y, and Z project. And after the special gift, you move along the continuum to making a major gift, like a $1 million sponsorship or endowment of a professorship. And then we also, on that fundraising continuum, are planned gifts. The Phoenix Society is the name of the planned giving society at Chicago, the Phoenix Society. And that is a group of individuals who have remembered the university in their will. So once they've taken care of their arrangements for their spouse and their kids and their grandkids, they make sure that they leave funds for the university when they no longer need them. And you might say, well, you know, I'm 30. I'm not going to ask a 30-year-old to make a planned gift. But, you know, what do you think about that? You're closer to 30 than I am.
Yes, I'm a little too close to 30, actually. Next one. When we talked about this, and what I thought was important about planned gifts is for those of us who are younger in the room, again, it's the relationship, right? It's just how is this going to evolve over time. At 30, maybe some of us are in a position to make a planned gift, but maybe it's just important to put that on your radar, to get you to be more aware of it, so that in 10 years, when you're starting to think a little bit more about it, or 5 years, it's something that's not new to you. Sometimes it's just about planting the seed and then coming back to it, but just letting alumni who are younger know, 20 years down the line, that's the next step. Right? That it's really about letting them know what the expectations are. And thinking about giving as a normal expectation, and this is the way we as alumni function in the alumni community. This is how it works. This is what comes next. And presenting it that way, I find to be pretty helpful.
Great. So remember, if you remember 3 things, it's get the gift, upgrade the gift, get the gift, repeat the gift, upgrade the gift. Okay? Remember those 3 things. That's going to be helpful for you.
And so, as I was saying, I think it's really about setting up expectations. As far as when you actually get ready to go make these calls, or, you know, I find that I do a lot of this over email. I don't know if that's allowed, but, you know, we tend to function over email, the alumni, right? It's just an easier way for us to communicate. And so that same process of sitting down to write these emails, sitting down to make the phone calls, or talking to people at an event, the way I start thinking about it is to remember that this is the way the university functions. Right? We wouldn't be here today, we especially wouldn't be here today, but the university as a whole wouldn't be here if people didn't give. So it's not a question of are alumni going to give, it's a question of when and how much. Right? And so thinking of it that way in terms of this is what we do, this is the next step in our experience at the university. And so then when I talk about asking for gifts, I'm not asking people if they want to give, I'm asking them if they've given yet, have they given this year? And just that little switch I find to be very helpful, because then I'm no longer asking someone to do something that they may not want to do. It's what we do. This is the next step in the process. And so I find it helpful to just get very clear on that before I start having these conversations. So that's the way I tend to get in that mindset. But then you also want to be aware of what's going on in the university. Right? So when you make these calls, what might people want to talk about? Right? You mentioned that you were here, that this was a great event, or have you been back to Alumni Weekend, or on Monday they're announcing the Economics Nobel Prize, right? What do you think about that? What are our chances? Like, they're pretty good, but those sorts of things. How can you engage people in the alumni experience and the university experience that they're still a part of, right? And just helping them understand this is how you fit into it, because there is some way they do, and part of our role, I think, is to help people see how they fit in to the university, and then from there it's a much easier step to, okay, now that you know how you fit in, this is where you go from here, this is how you do it. So come up with some of those events, and then just get a sense of what you're going to say. It's always easier if you have some awareness. I think it's really important that it be a conversation, right? You're building relationships, so you don't want it to be too structured. It is an attempt to engage people really where they are and where their experiences are, but having some sense of important key points you want to hit on, how you want to have that discussion about giving can be valuable. And then also having awareness of who they are. We'll have sheets for you to see later to get a sense of who you're calling, what their experience was with the university, what their experience has been giving in the past. So you have a little bit of a cheat sheet, which is nice.
Yeah, and that might go with one of the questions. How do I know how much to ask for? You're going to have a call sheet when you make your calls that will tell you what their previous giving history has been. And ideally, your campus liaison will tell you what the goal is. So if they've been giving at the $1,500 level and you'd really like to move them up to the $2,500 level, that should be on your call sheet. So you don't have to make that part up. They'll give you that background.
If we have access to briefing?
You have access to briefing. You can probably answer that better than I can.
Sure, we will print out a call sheet that gives you all the background information on the alum that you're calling. The information is from our database, so you'll know where they're living, what activities they were involved in on campus, and that should give you some context when you're building that relationship.
Any other questions?
No, really. As I said, you guys have all done this or have been called at least, so we all know something about this experience, so please let us know. We're building relationships right here in this room, hopefully. So smile when you dial, right? This is a fun experience. It's important, it's valuable. You're helping people engage in university, which is a valuable thing, and so you're helping them out by making this call, giving them an opportunity to be a part of something much bigger than them. And so then that personal ask is important. Right? We don't respond to telemarketer calls where it's just some recording. Right? You don't tend to respond to mass emails as much as you would respond to a personal solicitation. And so you need to ask them personally. And so there are different ways to do this, but think about it as that relationship building that we've talked about. And then it's just an opportunity to engage a fellow alumni and part of their experience and where they are now.
Let's talk about the 5 steps for fundraising. 5 easy steps for fundraising. First of all, connect personally. And Maggie talked about this. It's all about relationship and building a relationship. So keep in mind, even if you don't get a gift on your first call, that's okay, because you started on that road to building a relationship. So what I always like to do when I make a call is introduce myself as a volunteer. And to me, the word volunteer is a magic word, because you're not a paid caller. You are somebody who's taking your afternoon or evening to call somebody else. Peer-to-peer relationships are very important. And the university has said that they believe that alumni respond much better to another alum volunteer calling than a development officer or a paid student caller, that there is a connection and a bond that's built. So introduce yourself as a volunteer. I always ask if it's a good time to talk. Is this a good time to talk, or would another time be better? Now let's face it, you're taking a risk by saying that, because there are going to be people who say, oh God, this is awful, I'm racing out the door to pick up my daughter at soccer. But then you can respond, is there another time that would be better? Could I call you back at 5 o'clock today? And get a time to call them back. The reason why this is important, if you don't ask them, then when you go forward with your message and ask them for a gift, they're going to respond no. And their no is not really to your gift request. Their no is to the fact that they want to get off the phone and go pick up their daughter at soccer. So ask, is this a good time to call, to speak? And then tell briefly about your experience in Chicago. For example, right now, you could say, you know, a group of us are gathered together in Chicago for Volunteer Caucus, and we're calling other people in the Chicago area to ask for, to thank you for your gift and to get you involved. So tell them a little bit about your experience, or maybe you want to tell them about your class year, or when you were on campus. And then it's also very good to get them engaged in telling you a little something. And you would like to ask a question like, when was the last time you were back on campus? Or were you at Alumni Weekend last year, or whenever their 5-year anniversary was? So find an opportunity to get them to respond. Now, this isn't an opportunity to take 20 minutes and just reminisce about the old days, although sometimes it becomes like that, and you discover, I've done phone-a-thons where, lo and behold, someone called a person that they had been nearly engaged to, and I mean, it was a great experience for them, but the purpose of your call is to connect with them, but not make it totally dominate the call. So you want to get back in control of the conversation so that you can then move to the next step in the fundraising. Step 2 is to explain the purpose of your call and be very clear and very upfront about it. The reason I'm calling you today is, first of all, I want to thank you for your generous gift in the past. And when you have your call sheet, you'll know what their generous gift has been, and it's very wise to state exactly what that gift was and when they gave it. You know, time passes so quickly, and you think you just gave to the university 3 months ago, and lo and behold, you gave a year and 3 months ago. And if you don't tell them up front when they gave last, then they're going to say, well, gee, I thought I just gave to the university. So you can say something like, I'm calling today to thank you so much for the generous gift you made to the university last October 2008. And then you get into your ask. And when you make your ask, make sure that you are very clear and you end your sentence with the amount you're asking for. So I'd like to thank you very much for your generous contribution that you made last October, your very generous contribution of $50 that you made last October 2008. And I'd like to ask you to repeat your gift this year at the $75 level. So end your ask with that dollar amount. I'd like very much for you to renew your gift to Chicago of $75. Step 3, hit the pause button. Wait, listen, don't say anything. Let them respond to you. Don't talk. And then listen to what they said. And then be prepared to give feedback to what they said. Megan's going to go over some of the feedback that you might hear.
So step 4 is to then comment on that feedback. You're going to get some different responses, and some of them are nicer than others. Some are, yes, I would love to give. You know, I'd be happy to, or I'd be prepared for that. You know, don't always assume the next step is going to be, oh, all right, I don't want to do this. This is why. Right? Plenty of people will say, yes, I'd be happy to, you know, and then you can go from there. If that isn't their response, there's a way to handle that as well. One of the things to remember is that, especially for the younger alumni, the participation is really important. If they say, I can't do that much, you have a couple different options. One of which is what we say here is to ask them what amount they would be comfortable with, and to really remind them, because I think a lot of people don't know this, and I certainly didn't until I became more active in asking for gifts is that participation is really important to a lot of our rankings, right? US News and World Report, how much alumni give is really important. So even if you only give $5, $10, that's really helpful, right? And so for people to know who don't have the money to be giving major gifts yet, really just giving us $5 is really valuable. It's also important because then it starts them on that cycle of giving, right? So letting people know that they may feel a little bit uneasy about saying, I'll give you $10, right? That feels like it's worthless, and just letting them know that that in and of itself is incredibly valuable and really something that's important to do can help people feel more comfortable than at least starting to give. And so the other thing you want to then ask is there a certain time of year that's better, right? Some people say, I can't give right now. Some people only give, in a certain period every year. Ask them for a specific time, right? Which time would be better for you? Can I call you back in 3 months? Should I call you back in December? And try to nail down a date. Again, you're going to just think about what am I going to give? You're putting that in their head, and then we know, when to follow up. And then you're still building that relationship, right? You call them back in a couple months, and the relationship is building. They're continuing to think about giving. Those are very important things. And then also just remind them that they gave in the past and say, that was great, and we really appreciate that. And your gift last year has gotten us to the point where the university is still standing and can ask for money again this year.
Just one question. You please elaborate a little bit with the ranking and on the impacts to the number. Is it the number of donors or the amount that is given to the university?
It's the number of donors, right?
The percentage of our alumni who are giving. So the amounts of the gift does not matter, just the fact that you make a gift is extremely impactful.
And it matters to foundations as well as the rankings. Foundations also look at alumni participation rate. They want to make sure that alumni are engaged, and it's a good way of forcing colleges, universities, independent schools to make sure they are engaged with their alums.
One other point on that, I've also heard a lot of matching gifts come from that, because if the constituents don't care, why should an outsider? And that's a safe way of saying, I'm a student, it's only $5, but I'm standing up and being accountable. I wanted to ask you a question about the timing thing. When is it better to say, okay, I give in the spring, you're calling me in October, I'll call you back in the spring, versus taking a pledge now for later, and what is the, I don't know what the word would be, the rate of people who pledge and then don't give? Is it better to call them back timely with when they cut the check, or to take the pledge now, even if it's slightly less, and know that we'll get a reminder closer to the day the pledge is due?
Well, I'll take a stab at that, and Stephanie, I'm going to have you jump in on it. Typically, what you will find is the call sheets you get from your campus liaison will come about the time, or right before the time, when people are going to renew their gift or make a gift. So they do tend to look at that when they pull the report. If you give typically before the end of the year in November and December, or if you like to give in January or February, or maybe in June, and people do seem to fall into these patterns. Stephanie, how would you answer that?
Sure, I think it's always a case-by-case basis, of course. It depends on the individual, but the important key factor in this process is the follow-up. So, if someone has pledged to give $25 in the spring, they give you a verbal pledge in October, it might be nice to give them a call 6 months later and ask them, I just wanted to see if you were still, willing to give $25. You can feel out the situation. Sometimes it may be appropriate to ask if they'd consider giving $50. But just, asking them how they're doing, how they're feeling is always important. And also that personal follow-up is key to getting that gift in the door.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, it doesn't match my personal experience, but it answers it.
What's your personal experience?
I get called by the student phone-a-thons all the time. I give within the same 2 months every year for 25 years. And I offer the pledge, I get the thing 12 seconds later in the mail. It sits on my desk for 7 months, and then I write my check. And no one calls me back to say, are you sure you still have $25? Because I don't want them to say no, but I also don't want to be re-upped in the last minute.
Right.
Which has not happened. But then I have other people come to. I was just curious whether pledges are a good thing, or whether you're taking it as money today is money today, and I really don't want to hear empty promises. I mean, I don't know how you feel about pledges, but there are people, especially at the lower end, that get called in student phone-a-thons that aren't timely to your gift pattern. It's when the kids are having a night out, you know.
Yeah.
Go to
Well,
that's that.
there is a person, a campus liaison person who is pulling those cards for those student callers. So you might want to just speak up and say, you know, I'd really rather be called in May or March instead of December. I always make my gift in the spring. If I had to do it, it seems to work.
Yeah, one other thing with the student phone especially, I'm married to another UC alumni, and I get calls for me, I get calls for Josh. He has multiple degrees, so we get probably a quarter of 12 calls a year.
Yeah.
About what's
They're
happening.
lucky.
Somebody calls us and tells us about, do you know what's going on? Yes, we live in Hyde Park, we see it all the time. Or, you called us last month. No. And they seem to really not know. So one thing, and I know often when they reunion calls and our class calls are different, but having multiple degrees and being married to another alum means we probably literally get at least 12 calls a year from students.
So that's an issue, what I would say. But look at the positive side. If you have a degree from the college and the law school, well, maybe you got a degree in economics then too. Maybe you decided to get an MBA. Don't you want to be loyal to all those institutions? Are you just going to make one gift a year? Well, let's try to get 3 gifts. Right? Think of it on the bright side. There's more opportunities for loyalty for them to be connected. It's not just one gift. I want to give to the college. I want to give to the booth, Chicago booth. And boy, I want to give, you know, maybe to the divinity school or whatever. So, you know, think about it as an opportunity for those folks with dual degrees to be generous to all of their, you'd still be calling them if they were in the college alone. So be happy.
I'd say that's an excellent demonstration of how you get money from people.
Hi. Following up on the pledge question, particularly with the idea that it's good to get people involved year to year, what's the view of sort of money in hand versus having a pledge for 5 years? You know, you can't afford that right now, would you consider getting X amount over 5 years? I'm just wondering what your the patterns that you're seeing, what the extent there's research on this, what it's showing. Is it sort of, you know, what's better? Would it be better to have a 5-year pledge than a certain amount of money in hand, or what is the view of the university right
And
now?
capital campaigns typically, and the university at some point in the near future will have another capital campaign, and I hope you all have a chance to work on that. Capital campaigns are very typically like that, where you ask people to use assets rather than writing out of their checkbook. You ask them to draw on their assets and make a pledge of those assets over a 3-year or 5-year period. So that's very typical in capital campaigns. Now, for annual fund donations, which we all are talking about today, typically people make those annual fund gifts by writing a check out of their checkbook. They don't typically go to their assets to make that gift, even, you know, if it's $2,500, you know, they're probably at the range where they write that out of their checkbook rather than selling stock or something like that. Stephanie, what would you like to add to that?
Well, we do encourage giving over 5 years if that's something that our volunteers are interested in doing. If those of you giving in a reunion year, you know, for the class gift, if you make a pledge over 5 years, the entire total of that pledge will count towards your class gift in your reunion year. So that's a nice way to support the university. Another nice factor of that is that it gets our alumni participating every year for the next 5 years. So if that's an appropriate option for those who would like to support the college, especially in their reunion year, it's definitely encouraged.
From the university perspective, 2 other things that we're doing, things that are really important with pledges, is on anyone that goes into a pledge, we want to make sure, though, that next year you're also getting a reminder for that pledge. because one of the things that happens in a 5-year pledge is fulfillment can be difficult. The other thing that we're trying to roll out on a more broad basis that will be helpful for you, especially when you're talking about gifts that are underneath the Chicago society level, is doing 3-year multi-credit card, 3-year pledges, where you can get that automatic draft on your credit card over 3 years. And that's something that makes it a little easier as well. But again, it's very important that we still connect and talk to that donor each year to make sure they're staying in touch with the university. We don't want to lose that contact and that bond for 3 or 5 years while they're in a pledge.
Thank you so much for making that observation, because that is really helpful. Our goal is to get people to give every year. And the reality is, alums don't give every year. Oftentimes they lay out a year, maybe even more. And the goal is to get people to give every year. So if you've now got the option to get people to give every year, 3 years, by drafting a credit card, boy, go for it. That is golden if you can get people to sign up for multi-year annual fund gifts.
Quick question. Does the university pay a fee on credit card gifts the way a merchant would?
There are fees associated with credit card gifts, and generally the fee is small enough that being able to secure the gift by credit card, and the fact that so many people now, that's the preferred method of payment, accepting the benefits of accepting those cards far outweighs not doing so.
Yeah, and remember, it takes money to get money. You know, it does. And it's a worthwhile investment.
I have some friends from college, they get from West 2-3 years ago. And the person told them, well, you know, the rule of thumb is $100 per year you get to school. Which you were a bit surprised by it.
Give $100 for every year since you've been at school?
I was just wondering if it was coming from the university, if it was coming from the person who called them. Because they were hooked up like last night, actually, because they were a bit surprised.
You know, I've never heard that. That's a rule of thumb that I've never heard about. Any comments?
I'm not familiar with
Yeah.
that.
I can tell you the Chicago Society is so small, that's definitely not true.
Yeah.
That's definitely not true. I think that was, you know, a certain amount of pushing it bravado on behalf of someone who thought that the donor could do it.
Well, you know, when I first started doing fundraising for Chicago 30 years ago, and I'll keep this very brief, we were trained that every annual fund gift we solicited, we had to start at $1,000 and work down the ladder. Oh, $1,000 wouldn't work? Well, how about $500? Oh, $500. And you work your way down to $50. So they had a very strict way of having us do phone-a-thon calls. Were you aware of that? Yeah. Anyway, fortunately, we don't have to do it that way anymore. So, but I don't know about the rule of thumb for 100 for every year, but it's interesting. How about, any other questions, comments?
About the pledge, when I give online and spreading it out over the year, whatever, for instance, this part of the pledge, I don't know what they're talking about because this is just not my bailiwick or whatever. And it's like I think, well, I'm going to get X amount this year. I don't know if I told someone that, and I think I did. And but does that mean I made a pledge somewhere? And you know, it's like I have no clue. You know, when I read that, and then people like make a few calls, and I never thought about asking someone, do I make a pledge for it? And certainly 3 years and this and that. It's just like, you know, I see you gave $100 last year. You want to get $105 this year, or 110 or something. So this pledge issue seems to be maybe in a completely different, I don't know, realm or something. And
So because you're used to just giving a gift rather than making
yeah,
a pledge.
I gave a gift.
Online.
Online, and someone came and talked to me, and I gave a bigger gift, and someone else came to me.
All right. I want to hear that. Yeah, so personal solicitation really works.
Yeah,
right?
but even through all that, and people, you know, talking, it's like, it's just, I didn't know what they were talking about a pledge, and I don't know. Sometimes I check the pledge thing, so I know I'm giving more, and sometimes I do. And just sort of depends on what kind of workshop I'm in online. So maybe I might be the only one who's obtuse and lost about this, but maybe you could clarify it, and then we're, you know, I mean, I think the people who came to talk to me about asking for money was pretty good, but this pledge thing is, to me, I was like, was he doing that or not? And I don't know.
Is it the, I'm sorry, is it the pledge online?
Online,
Where
every time I'm
the-
getting, like, you know.
Where there's the box that you can check online?
Yeah,
it's a
it's
pledge
part of the
payment.
pledge. And I'm like, oh.
Right.
I'm like, well, you know, I told someone I was giving this much, but I didn't make a pledge. I'm not sure.
Right, and generally.
So I think it's something much more formal, is what you're saying.
It
You
is.
pledge, you know, and like if I had done it, I would know.
Yeah. But I think it's a really good question, because if it causes confusion for you when you go online, then you are certainly not alone. And people are like, well, do I have a pledge? I know I talked to somebody, so I think that speaks to some clarification we need to do with how that's presented online. I think that's a really good point, because you go on there and you're like, and if, you know, and sort of the peek behind the curtain with the university, we're sitting there, we're saying, if someone checks pledge, we're thinking installment pledge, the 5-year deal. But in your mind, you're like, I talked to a student caller last night, and I told him I would do my $100. And they said, and I got a note that said, thanks for your pledge of $100. I said, oh yeah, I'll take care of that today. So you're thinking, well, I just paid a pledge.
Right.
So it's confusing going outbound, even though we know what we're thinking back here. So I think that's a really good point. We have to work on how we can clarify that.
And so those are two different things.
Yeah. Yeah, it's two separate things.
So it's really two different concepts.
Yeah.
There's the promise you'll give money soon, and then
And then
pledge, which is a longer time,
pledge.
couple
Yeah.
years. Okay.
Anything else? Let's, yeah.
I was just going to say that when you actually are doing your calls and you have this nice profile sheet from the university, I think it's really important to try and pull in as much feedback and document your conversation and relationship with who you're talking to, so that some of this stuff comes out earlier, so that people have a chance to act on it, so that going in that someone has 4 or 5 degrees and we're probably getting hit from 4 or 5 different directions. Is that a problem for them, or what are the problems they're having related to giving?
Yeah, I think that's a great summary point to remember. Once you've called and you've gotten the pledge, make sure you make a note of it on the form, and Stephanie's going to be handing out some of these call sheets now for you to take a look at. Make sure you document it there and then hand those call sheets in, or if you're working online, send an email message to your campus liaison, your reunion liaison, whoever it is, to make sure they know everything you've gleaned. Oh, the person has, whatever complicating factor that you want somebody else to know about.
I just wanted to remark on that, which is that I'm working on gifts for my reunion year this year, and one of the things that I'm curious about that I think rarely happens when people call me for a gift for any institution that I've been a part of. And I take the point about the multiple degrees. It's like, if I have to give to 8 different institutions, then you should give to Chicago 4 times. But no one ever asked me if I declined, why I'm declining, or if I didn't give in a particular year, why I didn't give that year. And there's this, I guess, kind of assumption, and I tend to assume it, that, some people give and some people don't, like some people are just givers, and it's not really about reasons, and some people aren't givers, and it's not really about reasons. I think that's true to an extent, and I was kind of surprised in calling one of my classmates to try to get him involved in the committee work, when he's actually been more generous than some of the other members of my class, but he still said, oh, I always feel like I want to give more, but I don't get around to it, or it's at the time I'm looking at my visa bill and this and that. And that was surprising to me. I wouldn't have thought that about him, looking at the kind of facts about his record, about his giving. And I think there are a lot of first-time givers in my class, and there's going to be a trepidation calling them from all members of my committee to say, this person is a free giver. And I think even if they say that they're not going to give, it's important to say either, why not, or what would make you, what would entice you to give to in my case, the law school, what program at the law school would you ever be interested to give? Is there another way that you would ever want to participate in the law school? Are you interested in finding that out? And I don't think that that's ever happened in any call that ever done.
I think it's very important to be clear with them, as you say, and find out why it is that they're reluctant to give. And keep in mind, a no today may not be a no next year, but it is better to get a gift sooner rather than later, especially as they go out years after graduation. But you can talk with them about participation. You know, it's really important. Even if you can't give $50, could you give $5? So getting that first gift is really important. Talk about participation. Why don't we do a quick role play? Oh yeah, question.
Just for all that we might learn about, well, I won't get to the reunion class because I've had some issue this year, but since you asked me, my bonus check comes in July, and so for the next academic year, I'm happy to make up for lost time. Thank you for asking me, which no one does. Where on here is there for, if you learn anything important about this is why I'm not doing, or I'll do for this because you asked me for this, but if you never asked me about this thing over here, I would have given 3 times for it because that was my favorite prof that I feel, you know, an affinity to or whatever. Because that's my fear, is that we chat these people up, we build a relationship, and it goes into the vapor. If anyone else ever really got any more personal anecdote or something that's really develops that tie. The first thing you said is be personal, show how their money matters.
Right. So absolutely capture those comments on the bottom of your call sheet. You know what? The comments, I agree. The comment box used to be much bigger. This form has been redesigned. The comments used to give you a whole third of the page. Attach a separate sheet, send an email. It's got to get into Griffin, whether they are just retired, they just lost their job, their parents just died and they're now multimillionaires, whatever it is, put it in the comments. Yeah.
I think it's a real challenge with the professional schools and the divisions in graduate schools because there's a different affinity. And I think the best time to do, I went to another law school, is to do it on the reunion classes because I never give to my law school. I went to a highly endowed law school, so they don't need my money, right? But
Yes, they do.
The reunion classes are really the only time I think the professional school can really grab somebody who hasn't been a consistent giver. I have a lot of friends who went here who have never given to law school. And the only time they do give is on reunion classes.
So keep in mind what motivates people to give. I do most of my fundraising for the Division of Humanities, and it is, there are different affiliations. Divisional alums tend to affiliate around academic topics, around faculty, around their department, maybe around a particular group. Maybe they really love Shakespeare and they'll give to support a David Bevington program. So you just need to know your audience and need to know what motivates them. You want to hear a quick role play?
Yes.
Yeah, let's do a 7-minute role play. We'll be really quick with our call. We might truncate it a little bit, but we want to get some feedback. So real quick, be thinking as we're going through it, what was good, what could we have improved upon? This is totally unrehearsed, okay? So you want to call me or shall I call you? You're going to call me. Okay. And you are a recent alum?
Yes.
5 years out, is that it?
About 5 years out, yeah.
5 years out? Okay. Hello. Is this Maggie?
Yes, this is.
Maggie. Hi, how nice to talk to you. I'm Danny Kaufman. I'm a volunteer with the University of Chicago, and there are a group of us alums who are here at a volunteer caucus, and we are calling out to other alums in the Chicago area. And I wanted to thank you so much for your generosity. I noticed that you gave $5 last year to the university, and I really want to thank you for that. You know, contributions are so important to the university for books for the library and aid to young faculty so that they can continue their research and for scholarships for students. I really want to thank you for your participation and for your contribution last year. I noticed that you made your gift last October.
Yes, I did.
You know, I'm just wondering, you live in Chicago, do you get to campus often for events?
No, I haven't been down there in ages.
Oh, really? You know,
I say that a lot.
you know, I understand, life is so busy, gosh, but I tell you, there's a Harper lecture coming up in November 8th and 7 o'clock, and it's downtown at the Union League Club. I think you'd really enjoy it. It's going to be David Bevington talking about his new book. Is that something that would interest you?
Yeah, it might. So it's downtown?
Yeah, it's
not
downtown.
in
No, it's actually, it's going to be at the Bleacher Center. Have you been to the Bleacher Center?
Yeah, I've been to the Bleacher Center.
Yeah, good. Well, I think you might enjoy it, but we do really want to get you to campus, of course. The reason why I'm calling you today is to ask for your continued generosity. I want to thank you so much for that and ask for your continued generosity and ask you for a gift in the amount of $50 for this year.
You know, I'm giving the university a lot of money in student loans every month. You know, I'm still paying those back. I feel like I really am giving a lot as it is to the university. So.
I can understand that. The student loan issue is a big one. And yet it's so important for the university to have the contributions and the participation from alums. Would $35 be more reasonable for you?
Yeah, I got that. That seems better. I mean, it just seems like why if I'm already giving money to tuition, why I don't understand why you need more money.
You know, I appreciate that and the fact that student loans are very difficult, but you know, this will allow us to help other students like you who may not have the means to be at Chicago, and this might be their only difference between going to Chicago and not. And I know you appreciate the education that you got at Chicago.
Yes, no, absolutely. It was great.
So would it work for you to make a contribution of $35?
Yeah, that sounds like something.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. Let me just check real quick. Are you still at 123 South Grove Street?
Yes, I am.
Zip code 20015?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great. Well, I will send out a pledge card. The university will send out a pledge card, and you can return your gift with that. Thank you so much, Maggie, for continuing to be generous to the university. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you at that event at the Bleacher Center.
Yeah, no information on that. That sounds interesting.
Good. Thank you. Okay. Take a minute, turn to the person next door to you, real quick. Okay, you don't need to turn to the person. What did you like? What worked? What could we have done better? Yeah.
You could ask her if she had time.
Oh, you're right. I forgot to ask her if this was a good time.
Stupid question. Do we give people the opportunity to pay immediately by credit card?
Oh, yes. Excellent question.
And
I think you'll lose your $35.
Yeah.
But I probably wouldn't give online, right? Like I think, especially younger alums tend to just.
Yeah, but that's a very good point.
The whole discussion of pledge, so you're sending out a pledge card, and it's the whole confusion that we were just talking about.
It is, you can take your credit card number online, and then it's up to the volunteers to report back to the university staff and liaison. If the alum isn't comfortable with that, you can also follow up via email with the link to the online learning site. That's pretty easy. Because I hate receiving something later. I don't want you to spend postage on it.
So you'd rather
I don't want to think about it.
you rather get a credit card number? Good. I think it's a great idea. Ask for a credit card. Great. Get them signed up. Get that money. Good idea. What else? What else? Other comments? Yeah.
Well, I just feel like, you know, her response was so much, I'm already giving money because I'm paying back the student loans. I just felt like maybe the response would be more helpful really distinguishing, like, the money that you're giving for your tuition, like student loans and interest is like not really something that goes directly to
You already owe that money.
Right. And while we all sympathize with the fact that our student loan debt is very high, you know, this is something that goes toward like the community now, like right now.
And
not
current
something
students.
That you, not
Yep.
something that you did
Yep.
in the past.
Definitely. And if I didn't make that point clearly enough, I apologize, but it's a very important point to make. Yeah.
Is there some sort of a sheet of important facts, like the sales training I've had said, never repeat an objection. So don't bother saying, I sympathize that student loans can be burdensome. That's obvious. Don't put that back out there. And number two, when she says, I pay my, I feel like I'm paying the school every day as it is, to me, the better retort is something on the nature of, we're so proud to have been able to give you that money because did you know that financial aid or tuition altogether only covers X% of the cost of a student?
Yep.
And in our newly diverse environment and da-da-da-da-da, it takes even more, and we're looking to the generosity of those in the know to help those who might be able to be students here like you.
Excellent.
So is there like an FAQ of the facts that say, because sometimes you need data to say tuition only covers X% or something, because my fear in talking especially to the more sophisticated donors is thinking about the facts that say, because everybody thinks that the big universities have tons of money and that, once I'm paid for, I'm done. When that's just the bill for your dry cleaning. That's not making the shirt for the next kid, And I don't know, I would like to be more knowledgeable.
What is it, 80%, 60% the tuition covers?
I don't know the exact.
There's just a host of facts, though, that's all.
Tuition covers like 40%.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, that's something that we've been talking about in the Student Alumni Committee because there's actually a day in winter quarter where if you pay tuition, it stops paying for your patron. And I think, I don't know, but talking about facts, that might be an interesting thing to throw out there, like, on February 20th this year, a student who's going to university is paying $38,000 a year. That $38,000 is no longer paying to keep the lights on in their classrooms, no longer paying for the food, and no longer paying for the classes. So
Great point. Yeah, what else?
I also think that this crowd data is really important.
yeah.
I think we have to recognize that our alumni are just so data driven. It would really be helpful to have an intelligent conversation when those questions come.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And we used to get a little book of university facts, and I imagine that you have those for callers now. One more question? Yes.
This is just a comment of the U of C having tuition be 40%. I'm currently working at Columbia College, Chicago, where we have tuition covered at 95% of our operating budget. So it's actually very interesting to hear. I mean, we don't have much in the way of fundraising in Columbia, but one of the things that's interesting is saying that number, especially to people who are now at other institutions that are not like the U of C.
Right.
It might be, it drives home the point that how much more important giving is.
Very good. Any last comments, questions?
I was just going to say, from a positive feedback perspective, you did a great job in doing the pause, letting them fill the space. That's really important, I think, in terms of not having a monologue, but having a dialogue and a relationship. So you did a great job with that.
It is all about building a relationship. So remember, even if you don't get that gift, if Maggie would have turned me down, I still started that relationship and we started down that road. Thank you all. It's been wonderful.